they come out of the final turn. We wait for the red lights to go green and the season to get underway, which it does now, and away we go, sprinting towards the first turn. Hello everybody, and a very warm welcome to Estoril for the opening round of the 2016 International GTOpen. We have got 70 minutes of action and excitement to look forward to. The first of 7 stops around some of Europe's finest circuits. We kick off in Estoril before heading on a grand tour of Europe. Well, you join us on a beautiful afternoon here in Portugal. The rain of yesterday has finally cleared and we should be in for some great racing. It is Ben Evans taking you through the action. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Alex Kapadia, who of course finished the Le Mans 24 Hours last year. And Alex, you were racing a couple of hours ago in the Radical European Masters. What's the track doing today?
It's a little bit slipperier than normal today. Obviously this circuit is all about tyre management. The last corner destroys tyres. So we've just been out doing our first race of the weekend and we found it a little bit slipperier and struggling for traction most places. So these guys are going to really have to manage their tyres and just try and get to the end of the race and hand over the car to their co-drivers in the best condition possible. Well,
managing the tyres and the cars has been one of the themes of the weekend because unfortunately pre-event testing and indeed qualifying has proved to be somewhat attritional and we've lost a few of the cars that we were hoping to have. But what we have got on pole position is Fabrizio Crostani in the orange one, Team Lazarus Lamborghini Huracan. Fabrizio Crostani, who finished 4th in last year's Lamborghini Trophy, but has also raced in Euro Formula 3000 GP2 in his career. He shares the front row with Phil Keane in the Balfour Motorsport Ferrari. Phil sharing with Sean Balfe this weekend and was making the early running in a qualifying session that was disrupted with a nasty accident for the TF Sport Aston Martin. Third on the grid, it is Fernando Mornier in the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW, the team switching to BMW from McLaren from the end of last year. And we have a new McLaren on the grid, the Garage 59 McLarens, and it's Duncan Tappy who lines up in 4th place. Duncan very, very quick through the first 2 sectors on the lap, a little bit frustrated with how the car was performing through the final sector. 5th on the grid, it's the reigning champion, Miguel Ramos, but he has got a new driving partner this year in the form of Rodlan Rodriguez, and also a new weapon in the form of the BMW. It's a very warm welcome back to the International GTOpen for the Drovac School team. Cesar Campanico this weekend partnered by Andres Saravia, the Euro Formula Open graduate, but Campanico has made these Audis go very quick in the GTOpen for several seasons. 7th on the grid, it's the sports and new Mercedes of Luis Silva. The new Mercedes, absolutely magnificent, and that car has been turning heads in the paddock. Another car that's been turning heads is the Ferrari 488 of Thomas Fleur and Francesco Castellacci, and it is Thomas Fleur who will be starting that car, but Castellacci in testing yesterday, blindingly quick. We don't really quite know how quick the Radical is of James Abbott, mainly because it finished the qualifying session this morning in the gravel trap, but James, thumbs up, he looks in fairly buoyant mood, and then he has got the top 10 rounded out by Alexander West in the Garage 59 McLaren that he shares with Kevin Estray. So very, very strong grid assembled, and Alex is going to be very competitive in the early stages.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this first race of the season for these guys, they're all wanting to sort of go and prove themselves, but really I'd suggest what these guys need to be doing is just taking it a little bit calmer for the first race of the season, get to the end of the race without any incident. Unfortunately,
we had a big incident in qualifying this morning. That Sally Yuluk in the TF Sport Aston Martin. The good news is that Sally Yuluk is okay. The not unsurprising news is the car isn't, and sadly has been withdrawn from the weekend. But pleased to see Sally Yuluk walking away from what was a big hit. Yeah, I mean, that looks, I didn't see that accident before, but that looks pretty serious. He got out of the car, he was fine. He's fairly new to motorsport, so he's obviously still learning, but he's proven himself to be pretty quick, and I'm sure he'll be back up there at the next round. And Alex, you've got lots of experience racing both in like the Le Mans 24 Hours, the Le Mans Series, which are quite long races, and then also these shorter mini enduros. Does your driving style vary?
Yeah, I mean, these are more like sprints, although they're what we call them mini enduros. Realistically, they are pretty much a sprint with a bit of time management involved. It's only just over an hour, so the pro drivers are generally just trying to get the biggest lead they can, or trying to absolutely eke out what they can before handing over to their co-drivers.
And so here at Estoril, where are the corners to watch for? Where are the particular challenges?
The big one really is the last corner. That's the one that has the biggest impact on your lap time, and also you'll find that as the tyres really go off, there's the way you're going to find the biggest impact to the lap time with the tyres.
Let's have a look at the grid then. So Crestani in pole position, then Fernando Monnier and Duncan Tappy on the second row. Miguel Ramos and Cesar Campanico on row 3, ahead of Luis Silva and Thomas Fleur. Watch for that AF Course Ferrari to fly in the second half of the race. James Abbott and Alexander West completing the top 10. And then we have got the Renault Sport RS01 of Philippe Barrieroff. And that is another car that could feature when Diederik Schüthoff takes over for the second half of the race. Now that man on the left-hand side of your picture, a very significant entry to the International GTOpen this year. That is two-time World GT champion Thomas Biaggi. And surely the fact that the less experienced Crestani putting the car on pole position with Biaggi to take over the second half of the race, it's pretty ominous to the rest of them.
That's looking like a pretty serious entry there. I think the guys are going to have to really work hard to keep up with that man there, Sean Balfe. Him and Phil Keane, I think they're also going to be competitive come the end of the race as well.
Yeah, I think Sean Balfe, he needs the shades on. He needs to learn. Now he's doing a full season of the GTOpen.
I think that team's a great team. A brilliant frontier team. They're really, really well drilled. Good to see them on the front row of the grid there.
Off we go on the formation lap to start the first race of the International GTOpen season. If you've not seen the International GTOpen before, what you've got to look forward to then is a race for some of the world's finest supercars. It is going to be over 70 minutes in duration. There is a mandatory pit stop that comes once we're 28 minutes into proceedings until we're 42 minutes into the race. So essentially it's a 14-minute pit window, and although, as she was saying, Alex, it's a mini sprint or a mini enduro, really two sprints bolted together, there is still the element of strategy that comes into play.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, obviously you have a pit window, so you're going to try and eke out your fastest driver to give him the longest stint possible while still staying within the window. So that always adds an extra element of sort of complication to it, because you have to make sure when you're crossing the line that you're not going to go over that window by the time you come in the next lap. But I'm sure these guys will have worked that one out.
Well, we've talked about tyre management. They all run on a Control Michelin tyre, which is I think very much liked by the teams in the paddock. It has proved to be a very durable tyre. It's one that allows them to keep racing right through until the tail end of the race, as they now begin to form up side by side. So it's the bright orange one team, Lazarus Lamborghini Huracan. Alongside is going to be the red Balfe Motorsport Ferrari, Phil Keane and Sean Balfe. And this is one of the circuits where Balfe and Keane got on the podium last year. The other real factor is going to be the new two-car entries from the Theo Martin team with the BMW and the Garage 59 McLarens, both very professional teams and very good driver lineups.
Yeah, there's some new teams here. There's also a lot of new cars as well. You know, the M6 out there as well. We've got a Ferrari 488 out there as well. It's really interesting for the championship, actually, seeing these new teams coming into it, and top teams like McLaren as well, you know, with the Garage 59.
So the field swinging through turn 12 into this notorious final turn here in Estoril, probably best known for that move by Jacques Villeneuve, getting on for 20 years ago now. We're about to get the international GTOpen season for 2016 underway. The pace car peels off, and it's now the responsibility of Fabrizio Crestani to pace the field as they wait for the lights on the gantry to change. Then we'll be going racing for 70 minutes. Still weaving around from Crestani as he's got Fernando Monnier bottled right up behind him. And this is a very, very slow pacing of the field. And now Crestani lets go, and that's why he bunched them. The Lamborghini rockets away as they sprint towards turn 1. It's also a good start from Fernando Monnier despite being boxed in. But Phil Keane should cover that second place. Duncan Tappy looks to challenge for third around the outside. Now that looked very tight. Have they squeezed through? Yes, and Tappy does take third place. Looks to challenge for second immediately to the inside of Phil Keane. Fortunately, they're cleanly through, or are they? Because there's contact behind. It's Luis Silva and James Abbott. Abbott in the Radical was going for a gap that didn't look like it was really there. And it's Abbott who's gone around. Silva continues as Cesar Campanico is bottled up behind Miguel Ramos. That's the fight for 5th and 6th, as out front Crestani has converted very nicely.
I guess at this point all the guys are just really trying to bring their tyres fully up to temperature. They've obviously tried to do it as much as they can on the warm-up lap, but they're all now just pushing as hard as they can to get some front tyre temperature. They're always going to get the backs in with the rear-wheel drive cars, but the fronts are more important. But you can start to see Crestani starting to stretch his lead a little bit from Keane, but Keane's really coming back on him.
And already Fernando Monnier on to terms with Duncan Tappy, and it's great to see Tappy back with a full-time GT ride because he's a very talented driver, but he's got Fernando Monnier bottled up behind him. Monnier with point to prove as well. Then a little bit of a gap back to last year's champion Miguel Ramos. Two Terre Martin Motorsport BMWs absolutely immaculately prepared. Here's another look then at the Abbott and Silva moment. In fact, that was James Abbott all by himself, and he took a tyre barrier with him for company. That's going to take a little bit of recovery. Good news is that James Abbott is back underway, but I think the tyres are still possibly stuck out on the track as Phil Keane already looking to challenge Fabrizio Crestani. And one of the beauties, of course, of this multi-mark GT racing, Alex, is the cars have got their strengths on different parts of the circuit.
Completely, yeah. Obviously, you've got mid-engine cars, front-engine cars. You've got a rear engine there with a Porsche as well. So different cars obviously handled in different ways. So the two mid-engine cars there, the Lambo and the Ferrari, was probably the best balanced in terms of saving tyres. Some of the front-engine cars will tend to slide the rear a little bit more. And I would suggest that these two are probably going to be in the best situation come the end of the race.
Well, Phil Keane certainly is very anxious to get the Balfe Motorsport Ferrari to the front of the field. I'm sure that's partly in the knowledge that Thomas Biaggi will be taking over in the Lamborghini mid-race, but it's also clearly because Phil feels that he's got a good car underneath him. But this is going to be tricky because Crestani has got plenty of experience racing in the Lamborghinis. He knows exactly what the car is doing, and also, of course, Phil was saying to me earlier, he races a Lamborghini in British GT, so he knows all the strengths of the Lamborghini as well.
Yeah, it's interesting for Phil actually, obviously having a foot in both camps there. But the thing I would suggest is that the 458 is now being replaced by the 488. So the car that Phil's in, the 458, is actually a couple of years older than the Huracan there, and he's doing really, really well to be pushing him.
St. Tom, of course, the 458 has been such a success that every little trick has been teased from it, so they know they've got a perfectly balanced car. As Miguel Ramos runs a little bit wide, and we just caught a glimpse there of the silver Ferrari with the red stripe. That is the 488 in the race of Thomas Fleur, and he has got the very, very quick Francesco Castellacci who'll take over from him in the second phase of the race. And it's good to see Thomas showing so strongly early on. There in 6th place is the DriveX Audi, Cesar Campanico. He's keeping Miguel Ramos honest. But as Crestani and Keane are busy battling, they are also starting to stretch the field. As I say that, of course, Duncan Tappy posts the fastest lap and is starting to close onto their tail. All smiles in the Balfe Motorsport garage. Sean Balfe watching progress of his co-driver, Phil Keane. And there you go, headlights ablaze from Duncan Tappy in the bright orange Garage 59 McLaren. And Duncan who has got the much less experienced Michael Benham to hand over to at mid-race, again will want to get that car as high up the order as he can in these early stages.
As you say, Michael Benham's very inexperienced, but actually been proving to be pretty quick for some of his experience. So I think that perhaps come the end of the season with a bit more mileage. Oh, right up the inside there from Phil.
Completely sideways from Phil Keane, and he goes side by side with Fabrizio Crestani, and that was absolutely brilliant. He's still trying to make this move stick. Oh, he almost forces it to the inside line at turn 12, and he now runs side by side with Crestani, but then slows it, opens the door to Duncan Tappy as they filter into the Parabolica, and this race suddenly cracks into life as we come to the conclusion of lap 3. Phil Keane in the tow behind the Lamborghini down the start and finish straight. And that was why Phil Keane has got a reputation as one of the very best in the business, but it's still not settled. Crestani covers the inside, then moves back across the racing line. Phil Keane follows in behind him as they swoop through turn 1, and he may have got the switch back here for turn 2. Crestani defends. Keane looks back to the other side. Duncan Tappy says, I'll have some of that. He looks to join in the bright orange McLaren. And he might go around the outside of Phil Keane here at turn 3. This isn't bad, is it? Lamborghini versus Ferrari versus McLaren versus BMW, and the winner is Duncan Tappy. He sneaks through into second.
It's an amazing few corners there side by side, but Duncan definitely got the better of Phil there. They were holding each other up a little bit while they were going side by side for the last few corners of the lap, and Duncan just used it completely to his advantage. But I still think we're going to see some more from Phil in the next couple of corners.
We're seeing plenty now from Duncan Tappy, who forces the mistake from Fabrizio Crestani, and Duncan Tappy takes the lead of the race, and it opens the door to Phil Keane, who makes contact with Crestani as they head downhill. Keane shuffles into second just about, and is now taking his turn to hassle the McLaren, the Garage 59 McLaren of Duncan Tappy. They have got the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW of Fernando Monnier, who has joined in this party as well, and it's now Monnier who closes onto the tail of the Lamborghini. It's like a Formula Ford race rather than an international GT race. Absolutely brilliant dicing. And yes, we've still got 63 minutes to go. So through the final turn, now, straight line speed-wise, you would think that the Ferrari might just have the legs on the McLaren. Here's another look at how it all started. And that was actually very good, mature driving from Fabrizio Crestani. He saw Phil Keane coming, he gave him the racing room. And then Duncan Tappy. That was absolutely brilliant move from Tappy. He just snuck to the inside and it opened the window for Keane. But this isn't settled just yet, because now Tappy's having to defend.
Phil's just spent 2 laps working out all of the places where he's got better traction and better speed than Crestani, and now he's going to have to do the whole thing again on Duncan Tappy.
And Duncan Tappy knows what he's doing. He focuses totally on the exit from turn 4. He was very slow at the apex of turn 4. It means that Keane can't get any sort of advantage carrying some more momentum out. Back of the queue, it's Fernando Monnier. We've then got a super scrap going on for 5th and 6th as well. Here it comes, Miguel Ramos in the middle of the road. Cesar Campanico thinks about looking to the inside line of Miguel Ramos. And Ramos, taking the wide swooping entry, holds on. Duncan Tappy now to the bottom section of the circuit. And this is where Phil Keane will start to ramp up the pace as well, but he can't quite do it, as he swings left then right up on to the tabletop at the top of the circuit. We are on lap 5 of the race, and I think slightly more worryingly for the teams here, they're going to have to sort this out amongst themselves on the track, because we're still 20 minutes from the pit window. Interesting. Timing screen tells us that car 27, which is Fabrizio Crestani, is under investigation, and I would be willing to speculate that could be for the way he bunched the field at the start. That could certainly throw the cat amongst the pigeons, as still Tappy defends from Phil Keane. And this is tricky, isn't it, now for Phil Keane, because he's still got the Lamborghini behind him, he's still got the BMW in fairly close proximity, so he's not got a free hand to challenge Tappy.
No, he's also got to bear in mind that when they swap drivers later on, obviously he's got a very experienced co-driver in Sean, and Duncan's going to hand over to Mike Benham, who we've said is quick for the experience he's got, but probably not as quick as Sean yet. So he's obviously going to do everything he can to get past Duncan, but at the same time not risk anything, because he knows he'll have a quicker teammate getting in later on.
So the word that we have got is that Fabrizio Crestani is under investigation for warming his tyres at the start, which is something you picked up, Alex. He was weaving as they came out of the final turn onto the start and finish straight.
Yeah, the clerk of the course take a really dim view of that. They normally want you to sort of form up coming around the last corner and then stay still, but it didn't really do anyone any harm.
Well, we'll see whether or not that investigation yields anything. Meanwhile, we do have a change for 5th place, and it is Cesar Campanico, who has ducked to the inside of Miguel Ramos. Campanico elevated into 5th position then in the DriveX Audi. Now that could be an interesting driver combination as the series unfolds. Campanico has always been very, very quick in that car. Andres Saravia, the Euroformula Open graduate, showed some great turns of pace, and it's one of those drivers who could well respond by really stepping up their form and consistency by moving into GT racing. So that is going to be a dynamic to watch as the race unfolds. Meanwhile, Miguel Ramos, a new driving partner this year in the form of Roldan Rodriguez. He won the championship last year as much as anything by knowing when to take the points and knowing when to fight for the win. So he won't be unduly concerned by 6th place during these early stages, as Duncan Tappy seems to have just pulled the pin a little bit, trying to ease away from Phil Keane. And as you were saying, Alex, as long as Keane can keep Duncan Tappy in sight, I think he'll be reasonably happy.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the best thing for his race long term. Obviously, he'd like to get in the lead and give Sean the best possible opportunity to get to the win. But I think that just staying in second will actually give him best position for the end of the race.
Of course, the other wild card here is that Fernando Monnier hands over to Gustavo Yakiman, one of Argentina's finest racing talents. He's had great success throughout the course of his career, and therefore you shouldn't discount BMW either.
It'll be interesting to see how he gets on coming back from LMP2 back into GT3 again.
And you've got experience in lots of these different cars. You've raced LMP cars. What are the main things you've got to adjust to?
Obviously, the LMP car's got a lot more high-end downforce, whereas the GT car, you're really much more working with your tyre. Having said that, the new GT3s, especially this year with the new Audi and Huracan and 458, they've all got a lot more aero than they used to have. But you're really having to learn to drive with the tyre more in a GT rather than in a prototype. You're really using the aero much more.
Well, there is one of the new for 2016 GTs, the Ferrari 488 of Thomas Fleur. He's having a great scrap with the second of the Garage 59 McLarens, which is piloted by Alexander West, and West will hand over mid-race to McLaren Works driver Kevin Estre. So we have got some very, very quick drivers who are due to take over at the second half of the race, and it's why the pro drivers who are starting the race, Duncan Tappy, Phil Keane, they know that they have got to build a buffer as much as they can, and at the moment Tappy has got some 22 seconds over Alexander West.
Yeah, you have to say this is really impressive from Garage 59, their first race. They're to be leading, and also to have Alexander West in 8th place, yet with Kevin Estre still to get in. Yeah,
it's looking reasonably good for them in these early stages, particularly as Phil Keane just made a little bit of an error there through turn 4. And there is Alexander West in the second of the Garage 59 McLarens. He's about to be joined by Luis Silva, the new Mercedes. It just looks mean standing still, let alone on the track. That car has been showing good pace throughout the weekend. And as a driver, Alex, when somebody flashes their headlights, does that just make you want to turn aside and wave them through?
Not at all. You don't even notice it half the time. When you're chasing, you think yourself, well, it'll distract him a little bit, but most of the time it doesn't.
That was Alexander West trying to force the issue on Thomas Fleur. Didn't quite work out. Fleur able to maintain the advantage. We're coming to the end of the 8th lap of the first race of the season in the International GTOpen. We have got 56.5 minutes remaining. It's Duncan Tappy who leads the way. Phil Keane is second. Third, the bright orange Lamborghini Huracan of Fabrizio Crestani. Fourth, we've got Fernando Monnier. Fifth, Cesar Campanico. Sixth, Miguel Ramos. Seventh, Thomas Fleur. Eighth is Alexander West. Ninth, Luis Silva. And Philippe Barrieroth completes the top 10 in the Renault RS01. We have got another investigation, our timing screen is telling us, contact between Duncan Tappy in car 59 and Fabrizio Crestani in the Lamborghini. Well, the good news for Crestani is that his team manager is already at race control for a separate investigation, but I didn't really, it's hard to say if there was anything particularly untoward. They were just seeming to run very close to each other on the track, and certainly neither car has picked up any damage, which is the most important thing.
Just starting to see Phil Keen's car, then a second place Ferrari there, starting to move around a little bit on the brakes. Looks like his rear tyres are starting to go off a little bit, perhaps. That's why Duncan's been able to edge a little gap on him the last couple of laps. If you look into turn one, there's a really big a big bump in the braking area, and you might see the back of the car start to move around a little bit when you get down to the turn one next lap.
Is that bump a lot worse than last year? Because it seems to be catching a lot of drivers out throughout the course of the weekend.
I can remember that bump being there 5 or 6 years ago. I had a teammate who lost it under that bump, but it does seem to be getting bigger. I don't know whether they just need to resurface it around here.
Here is Fernando Monnier in 4th place, the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW, and that is another mean-looking car. Great to see Fernando Monnier back in the International GTOpen, having raced last year in the TCR Championship, also experience in the World Touring Car Championship, and now really committing to GT career, certainly for 2016. Although he has got to start thinking about consulting his mirrors. Cesar Campanico is going to try and close up onto his tail as well. But for the Teo Martin Motorsport team, just to have both cars running smoothly and running towards the sharp end of the field is really all they'd have asked for in this first race.
Yeah, like I said, those guys and also the Garage 59 guys, it's a big ask to come in with 2 cars and run in a few endurance races and not have any issues. So they'll be looking to have a good, clean start to the season.
Exactly. There's a long way to go, 14 race schedule, and putting the car in the barrier with a heroic move in race 1 is unlikely to win you anything more than the torn-up boarding pass for your flight home from the team manager. So for Fernando Monnier, he is just letting the race come to him. We're still some way from the pit window opening. That's going to open in 11.5 minutes time, when there are 42 minutes left on the clock. That's when the element of strategy starts to come into play. Monnier scything towards the end of the 10th lap of the race. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Duncan Tappy, she picked up, and it's just beginning to ease clear of Phil Keen now, who once more is coming under a little bit of hassle from Fabrizio Crostani.
Just look on the brakes there, you can see the bump there as the front comes down and compresses the suspension under the braking. You can see the whole thing skitting around a little bit.
Duncan Tappy, headlights ablaze in the Garage 59 McLaren. Duncan, who has most recently been a Bentley Works driver in Blancpain Series, also was racing in the GT Asia Championship last year. Of course, for me, his crowning career achievement was 2005 Formula Ford Festival winner. As running very wide there, Fabrizio Crostani coming out of turn 4 and using all of the road and possibly a little bit more of it. The good news so far is there don't appear to have been any penalties being sanctioned, and that's really what we want to see. We don't want to see the race being interrupted. Right, now back to the fight for 7th and 8th place. Thomas Fleur and Alexander West. And Fleur is doing a very good job here of parking the car in the middle of the road and basically saying to Alexander West, you want to get past me, you're going to have to drive around me. And at the moment, West hasn't found an answer to that.
No, but it's impressive driving from West, you know. That was really, really sort of controlled driving out of turn 3 there. It's really, really easy. You come over a crest and it's really easy to light up the rear tyres out of there. And once you start lighting them up, you get more and more tyre temperature at the backs, and it's just a vicious circle. You get more temperature, you then get more spinning, and then more temperature and more spinning.
Duncan Tappy leads the way from Phil Keen and Fabrizio Crostani as we've got 50 minutes to go here in Estoril. So Fleur and Alexander West doing battle as here comes our reigning champion Miguel Ramos. And Ramos, who was so often the bridesmaid in the International GTOpen, it was really to the delight of the whole paddock that he claimed the championship last year, remaining with the Teo Martin Motorsport team this year, but switching to the BMW, switching co-pilot as well to Roldan Rodriguez. And there is the 31-year-old Roldan Rodriguez, former Force India test driver going back to 2007, Rodriguez. So driver who comes with quite some pedigree. And for Miguel Ramos, I think this is exactly how we quite like it, because he's out on his own. He's just able to manage the pace of the race himself without having to get caught up in somebody else's battle. So he comes through to turn 6 and heads on downhill. And we've seen quite a few drivers this weekend, Alex, being caught out coming out of turn 6 into turn 7. It seems quite a tricky section. Yeah,
when you're coming out of 6, you can't see the exit of 6. It's really, you come over a blind crest and all of a sudden the curb comes up, and it's very difficult to actually judge how much road you've got when you commit to getting on the throttle coming out of there. You have to, it's just experience, and eventually you get to suss where that is. But guys who haven't been around the circuit quite so many times will have issues there.
Here is our race leader, Duncan Tappy. His lead over Phil Keane has gone out now to just shy of 2 seconds, with Cristani holding on in 3rd place. We're here at Estoril for the first race of the season for the International GTOpen, and we're just a few moments away from the race being turned on its head, because in 7 minutes' time the pit window opens. But as we've been discussing, Alex, we'd expect to see Duncan Tappy and Phil Keane probably staying out towards the ends of the pit window. 3rd place car for Fabrizio Cristani, with Thomas Biaggi poised and racing in the pits. He might come in a bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect either Duncan Tappy or Phil Keane to be coming in anything earlier than the absolute latest they possibly can do. They're going to try and eke every last second they can. The gap at the moment between 1st and 2nd is 1.9 seconds. If either of them comes in a lap earlier than they need to, that's possibly the difference between them and their teammate, and that could completely reverse the first 2 positions.
And also it then determines the extent of the exam question that others are set for the latter stage of the race. Something else that's really striking about seeing these 3 cars at the front of the field, they're braking clear, is just how almost millimetre perfect the drivers are. And you don't appreciate really until you see the cars up close, or how quickly they're going, and just the level of ability required to get the cars working that precisely around the track.
Yeah, I mean, they're thinking way ahead, and obviously GT cars are quite heavy cars. They need to be positioned on exactly the right part of the track. The track is much grippier on some parts of it than others, so they're thinking quite early going into the corner how they're going to get it into the corner. They've got to get it right onto the apex. If they're 2 feet wide, that will multiply all the way through the corner, because 2 feet wide of the apex, the outside tyres which are doing all the work are generally going to be on a less grippy part of the track, and they're just going to keep on sliding and sliding and sliding. That's then going to obviously affect their lap time, but it's also going to grain their tyres as well.
But as you say, the weight of the cars means that to be able to do that so precisely, that's why you see these guys at the very top of the game being able to find a race in something most weekends. We're currently watching the battle for 7th, 8th and 9th. It's Thomas Fleur from Alexander West and Luis Silva. Luis Silva in the sporting new Mercedes, who we've seen as a perennial competitor in the International GTOpen, but equipped with the new machinery, he is now poised to be very competitive proposition. Now, in terms of this group, we can expect to see Thomas Fleur coming in quite early to hand over to Francesco Castellacci. Likewise, Alexander West, I suspect with Kevin Estre poised to go, will be in when the pit window opens. For Luis Silva and Antonio Coimbra, his co-driver, they're reasonably evenly balanced, so they might take advantage of the cars in front ducking in to start to enjoy a little bit of clear air. And this is always the fascinating part of the race, when you've got that changeover between the teams that started with the pro driver switching over to the amateur driver, the teams that started the amateur driver switching to the pro driver. It throws the race into flux, and it can be quite difficult to read, particularly if you're a driver, Alex, and you don't really know who you're racing against, or you're racing against somebody on the other side of the track.
Completely, yeah. The only solution is just to keep going absolutely flat out until it all balances out. It normally takes a lap or 2 after the pit stops have all finished, and then the timing screens update, and then you know roughly where you are. But the guys won't be thinking about that. They'll just be pushing as hard as they can.
And what do you do to prepare to jump in the car? The second drivers won't have qualified this morning. They'll have last been out on track 24 hours ago, and now they're expected to jump in the car and just get straight onto it.
most of them will have like a pre-race routine that they're going through right now with a couple of minutes to go. So they'll have put their helmet on, got the radio in, they'll have had the final discussion with their team about how who's going to be doing what in the driver change to make sure that goes as smoothly as possible. If they're doing a good job, they'll be now just sat quietly at the back of the garage somewhere, just going through exactly how they're going to drive the lap, how they're going to drive the car, and even things like your out lap. There's a lot of time to be gained on your out lap. So how are you going to nail how hard are you going to hit the throttle coming out of the pits, and how much speed you're going to try and carry around the long first corner pit lane, because you're not coming out onto the track before the first corner. You've actually got to go around a corner in the pit lane, which is quite dusty. So it's quite easy to make a mistake in there as well. So little things like that they'll be going through in their head before they get in the car.
And then they just have to get straight on the pace. Of course, Estoril was probably seen of the ultimate outlap in glory, which was Gerhard Berg, the 1993 Portuguese Grand Prix. You may recall, came out of the pits, lost it as he lit up his tyres, spun across the track into the barrier and out of the race. Now here is Antonio Nogueira in his Porsche, and he is one of the competitors in the GTOpen class. He's currently keeping Claudio Sadanovic, quite honest, in the AF Course Ferrari. Sadanovic, who's sharing this season with Stéphane Lemeray, has, of course, the reigning GTOpen champion. Sadanovic has been one of the perennial competitors in the International GTOpen, absolutely loves his racing. Now this is a new weapon for Philippe Barrieros this year. You may recall last season we saw him in the AF Course Ferrari, the Renault RS01, which is being run by Nicky Pastorelli's V8 Racing Squad, and introduced at the start of 2015 for the Renault Sport Trophy, but increasingly the car's coming across to race in GT3 spec. Barrieros under pressure from another GT3 car, which is the Radical of James Abbott, which unfortunately a little bit in the wars after that first lap incident, and that's a new nose cone.
It'd be interesting to see the start of that incident. We only caught the end of it, but we saw the tyres flying. Wasn't sure if James got pushed into the tyres there or what really, but it would be interesting if we got a replay of that.
Here is our race leader, Duncan Tappy. We are on lap 16, and Phil Keane hasn't let Duncan Tappy escape more than 2 seconds from him, with then Fabrizio Crostani just behind him. And it's amazing really, after the best part of half an hour's racing, that they are separated by just 2.8 seconds. The good news on our timing screen is that the incident between Duncan Tappy and Fabrizio Crostani is going to have no further action, but we are about to get imminent action because Cesar Campanico, who has closed up onto the tail here of Fernando Monnier, and Campanico absolutely flying in the DriveX Audi, and it seems that the Audi really seems to like these more technical circuits as opposed to some of the fastest tracks.
Yeah, earlier on in the season, the BOP for the Audi was it was quite slow on the straights, but had massive aero through the corners. So I'd expect it to be quite quick coming out of the last corner, and then potentially be quick for the first part of the straight, but then maybe struggle against the BMW on the second half of the straight.
And as you called it, that's exactly what happens. Fernando Monnier buys himself a couple of tenths of a second, and therefore is able to withstand the pressure of Campanico. And there is the sign for Miguel Ramos saying, come into the pits, the pit window will be open next time around. And so that is to hand over to Roldan Rodriguez. And this is really the thinking that the teams have to do on the pit wall. They're reading the strategy, and they clearly want to make that driver change as soon as possible.
That's right, yeah. All the guys who are putting their pro drivers in now are absolutely praying for a safety car about now. It's always a toss-up between putting the pro in first or second. There's advantages to both. You have to look at the possibility of a safety car. If there's a safety car, you would always rather your quickest driver was in last. That way, if the amateur driver lost anything to the pro driver who was out there in the first half of the race, all of that advantage would be regained. So the amateur driver would catch up to the back of the pro driver, and then it would switch around in the pit stops, and the pro drivers would get in against the opposition's amateur drivers. Having said that, if you put your pro driver out first, there's other advantages. You get to run generally slightly longer in the pit window because the way the rules work, you can generally do one extra lap. And also it's a really good psychological thing for the AM driver to see how fast the pro driver is going in the car. If they're the first ones in the car and the car doesn't feel quite as they expect it to, you sometimes find that they then struggle and they don't believe the car can do it. If it's just been proven to them by the pro driver, there's no excuses, they just have to get on with it.
Into the pit lane now is Claudio Stanvic. It is going to be Stéphane Lemeray who takes over from him, and Lemeray, who finished third in last year's French GT Championship, and has also had great success in the Le Mans Series in the GTOpen class. That a couple of years ago. It's arguably a little bit quicker than Stanvic. So that could be quite interesting. Now the big question amongst this leading group, of course, is when does Fabrizio Crostani peel into the pit lane? Because what we've not really covered is that probably of this leading group, Crostani to Biaggi and then Fernando Monnier to Gustavo Yakiman, those are two really quite evenly balanced driver pairings, as now Miguel Ramos comes to a halt. Roldan Rodriguez opens the door, Ramos gets out, and something that a lot of people watching at home won't appreciate is that these teams were in the pit lane until late into the evening practicing these driver changes, because as you well know, behind the wheel, it can take laps to find 5 seconds on the track. It can take 1 moment in the pits to lose it.
So easy to lose it in a driver change. These guys have been practicing this time and time again, switching one driver in, the next driver in, the next driver in. It's little basics like who does up what belt, you know, and if somebody panics and they sort of fumble the belts, they've just got to stay calm, really sort of carefully click in the belts slowly, and actually it ends up being way quicker.
Well, we just saw Kevin Estoril taking over from Alexander West then, as also in is Felipe Barrieros. That is going to be Diedrich Schitthoff, who will take over, and Diedrich, who we saw a couple of years ago in the V8 Racing Corvette alongside Archie Hamilton. That driver change concludes. Fabrizio Crostani staying out there. Phil Keane, of course, would have expected to. Duncan Tappy likewise. And at the point of the ducking the pits, it was about 40 seconds that Duncan Tappy had over Sander West before he handed over to Kevin Estoril. So that is going to be a gap to watch for as they chase it down a little bit later on. Phil Keane, yeah, he seems to have got the best out of those Michelin tires quite early on, and it's actually been moving around underneath him, that car, now for several laps. Lamborghini Huracan of Fabrizio Crostani trying to close up onto Phil Keane as they swing through turn 6 and then downhill towards turn 7. They've got Antonio Loiguera, who moves smartly aside, and that's always an unwanted distraction when you're fighting at the front of the field. It is a little bit of traffic, particularly here where the corners come thick and fast. Yeah,
Phil Keane just caught this Porsche at the exact worst point on the track. You've obviously got the chicane, it's very, very difficult to pass him, but then he's going to come up behind him going into the long parabolica corner, which is going to disturb his airflow on his over his wings and really, really hold him up coming onto the straight, which might give the Huracan a chance.
Of course, it depends whether or not the Huracan fancies ducking on the occasion, exactly as you called it, Alex. Phil Keane catches into the turbulent air right at the wrong moment as James Abbott comes in. It's going to be Colin Noble who'll take over from him. Noble, the Radical SR1 champion from a few years ago. He's most recently been racing in the Formula Renault 2-litre NEC Championship, and still Crostani stays out there hassling Phil Keane, which suggests to me that clearly they're comfortable with the pace the Lamborghini's running.
Yeah, I guess they're happy to keep on pushing while they can, and at the moment they're probably hoping that if they were to change drivers now, the other driver's going to take a lap or two to get into it, and they're probably thinking, well, he's doing all right at the moment, so let's just keep going. And if that extra lap that he was going slow for put him behind another car, he's got to have to pass somebody.
Into the pit lane now comes Fernando Monnier, and that is Gustavo Yakiman who takes over from him. Yakiman, who has been one of the biggest pre-season signings for the International GTOpen, hugely popular driver back in Colombia, but as you say, making the move out of LMP2 cars. He finished 3rd in the World Endurance Championship, LMP2 Championship last year. Now what can he do taking over in 5th position? Is a podium going to be on the cards, or are the cars at the very front of the field going to be able to have enough underneath them? Well, certainly the Lamborghini we expect to go well. Sean Balfe is a very rapid and steady pair of hands as well to take over from Phil Keane. Michael Benham, something a little bit of the unknown, because as you were saying, Alex, he's inexperienced, but when you take over the lead of an international GT race, the adrenaline might click in and it might all come together.
Yeah, and like we said, he's proven to be quick in testing, quicker than most guys of his level of experience. So I think these guys are going to be they're going to be there or thereabouts at the end, but it just depends on Mike's pace.
Kevin Estoril, first flying lap, he's already netted 2 purple sectors, which suggests that he is on for the fastest lap of the race in the Garage 59 McLaren, also in his Says Campanico. That's the Audi we see coming to the pit lane now, and that will be Andres Saravia who takes over from him. And yes, Kevin Estre, a 1 minute 39.010, 2 seconds quicker than the race leader Duncan Tappy.
That's really impressive, really impressive. And obviously, when Mike Benham gets in the car, Kevin's going to probably potentially be 3 to 4 seconds a lap quicker. We knew he was 40 seconds behind when they pitted, so Kevin's going to be right up there at the end of the race.
And he is continuing that pace. He's just gone sub 20 seconds for the first sector, which in a GT car is really saying something, particularly now as Duncan Tappy's in amongst a little bit of the traffic. He's just up behind Roldan Rodriguez, or rather Gustavo Jacobin in fact it was, as Phil Keane and Fabrizio Crestani continue battling. In terms of the pit window, it's open for another 7 minutes. Oh, Phil Keane kicks the car sideways again. Just wonder whether it might be some new rear Michelins coming on for Sean Balfe at the end of Phil Keane's stint. The progress of Estre surely is going to be a slight cause for concern. Some of the other teams watching from the pit wall. They swing out of the final turn and now into the pit lane. Sprints Fabrizio Crestani. He's going to do well to get that stopped in time. Oh, that could be touch and go. He's going to hand over to Thomas Biaggi. And as you were saying, Alex, it's all about those extra tenths of a second into the pit lane, as demonstrated.
Yeah, but importantly there, Phil went around for an extra lap, Phil Keane there. So I think that although the Crestani and Biaggi car was right behind them, I think that come the end of the pit stops, they'll have potentially a couple of seconds advantage.
So that is going to be very interesting. The Orange 1 Team Lazarus get to work. They strap in Thomas Biaggi, who is... well, he's won so many championships, don't know where to start. A 2-time FIA GT champion, a Superstars Series champion, Italian GT champion as well. And there is Gustavo Jacobin, essentially a lap down, having had his pit stop, and now this is arguably the point, and this is a really difficult call, isn't it, for Garage 59, because Duncan Tappy, he's probably a second or two a lap quicker than Michael Benham, but he's now got some quick traffic around him.
Yeah, exactly. They should be getting blue flags though. Whether they move out of the way for them is a different matter. But ideally, this shouldn't hold him up. But I have to wait and see. Again, he's coming to pass them coming into the Parabolica again, so it is going to affect them.
And if you were in Duncan Tappy's situation now, what would you be saying to the team on the radio?
I still think he should stay out until the absolute limit of his stint. The realistic thing is he might lose half a second passing some of these cars, but I think that he's still going to be so much quicker than Mike is at the moment, that I think that it's still on balance better for Duncan to stay out.
And that's exactly what he does. Meanwhile, Andres Saravia and Gustavo Jacobin race past Colin Noble. In fact, into pit lane now comes Duncan Tappy. He peeled across at the very last moment to hand over to Mike Benham. So Benham is going to have 30 minutes or so. Also into the pit lane has come Phil Keane to hand over to Sean Balfe. So our mandatory pit stops are just about completed. So out gets Duncan Tappy. Out already is Phil Keane. In gets 2004 Spanish GT champion Sean Balfe. Balfe Motorsport team getting to work new rear tyres. Meanwhile, for Michael Benham, here is Thomas Biaggi. So this is fascinating. Biaggi is racing the two cars that are static in the pit lane. He is about halfway around the lap now, and this is exactly what you talked about earlier on, Alex. It's the ability to jump in the car and absolutely nail the outlap.
Yeah, we're just waiting for his first sector to come up to see what he can offer, but obviously he's got something to go to beat Kevin Estre's outlap, or first flying lap. That was pretty impressive.
Kevin Estre has already cleared Roldan Rodriguez as well. So Estre up into 6th position, and this is the point fairly shortly, now all these pit stops complete, where we'll get a view of the order and we'll see how the second half of the race is going to unfold. And in fact, this is going to be a very significant advantage coming out of the pits for Sean Balfe. I was expecting it to be a little bit closer than that. I just wonder if there was an issue for Biaggi in his pit stop that we didn't see. The two cars were conjoined when they peeled into the pits, and there's now the best part of 10 seconds between them.
Yeah, we didn't catch them leaving the pits and what happened there, but there is a big advantage there for Sean now. So this is going to get really exciting. Obviously, Sean's a very quick driver, but he's got Gustavo Jacobin up behind him, Biaggi, Kevin Estre all coming from behind now to try and catch him up.
I remember last year in the Silverstone round just how much Sean enjoyed doing battle with Alvaro Parent and racing that level. Now here is Michael Benham, who has also had a slightly slower pit stop in the Garage 59 McLaren. He's got Thomas Biaggi lined up behind him. It's going to be the end of this lap. We'll find out the order, because this is a little bit unexpected, because I think that Andres Saravia and Gustavo Jackman are both in the mix as well, and they would appear to have jumped both the Orange 1 Team Lazarus Lamborghini and the Garage 59 McLaren through the pit sequence. So here is Andres Saravia, and he is essentially in third place. There is Gustavo Jackman in second position, and then Michael Benham has dropped down into fourth, but it will be the end of this lap when we will get a sense of the advantage for Sean Balfe and then the deficits that they have got to try and claw down. But just mentally placing the cars around the track, it would seem as if Sean is going to have a reasonably comfortable advantage. Here he comes now over the start and finish line, in the lead of the race. We wait for Gustavo Jackman to come past the commentary box, which he does now, and Jackman 19.7 seconds. That's quite an exam question for him.
Yeah, that was an amazing pit stop by the Balfe Motorsport guys there to turn that around.
Gustavo Jackman then in second place. Third place is Andres Saravia. Michael Benham is in fourth. Thomas Biaggi is in fifth. 28.9 seconds adrift of Sean Balfe. And Kevin Estre we continue to wait for in the McLaren, and he is 43.6 seconds off the lead. This is going to be fascinating in the final 30 minutes.
Yeah, the big question now is how fast is Sean going to be? Obviously, Spanish GT champion. He was out racing LMP2 last week. He's in all sorts of different things all the time, but it'd be interesting to see how quick Sean is now relative to the guys coming up behind him.
Well, we've also got another car that's flying. Francesco Castellacci in 8th place has just on the 1 minute 39.8, and he's the only driver currently circulating in the sub 1 minute 40-second bracket. So here is Thomas Biaggi on to turns to Michael Benham. There is Duncan Tappy debriefing in the garage. And for Michael Benham, as we're saying, he is relatively inexperienced, but has worked very hard to get up to this level as quickly as possible. But this is almost a dream come true when you're in your first international GT race and you're about to go toe-to-toe with Thomas Biaggi.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, from his first two sectors, that's really impressive pace. He's within a second in the first two sectors, so to do that in your first big international GT race, that is impressive.
So the pit window closes. We have got 28 minutes remaining here in Estoril. Sean Balfe leads the way. Gustavo Jackman is second. Andres Saravia is third. Michael Benham in fourth. Thomas Biaggi fifth. Kevin Estre sixth. Roldan Rodriguez in seventh. Francesco Castellacci is eighth. Antonio Coimbra ninth. Diedrich Schitthoff in 10th. There is Stefan Lamaret, Antonio Nogueira and Colin Noble. And they're about to close up onto the tail of Nogueira. Headlights being flashed here by Michael Benham. He will look to try and clear the Porsche as quickly as possible. That last lap from Benham, a 1 minute 43.3. Very, very strong lap time, given his comparative lack of experience. Oh, and Biaggi getting a little bit caught up there behind Nogueira. Just caught him at the wrong moment. He's still behind the Porsche along this straight. Headlights being flashed from Lamborghini. He now eases past. So for the pace of Sean Balfe, that last lap for Balfe, by the way, was half a second quicker than Gustavo Jackman, or half a second slower than Gustavo Jackman, but Jackman, with the time left on the clock, he needs to be about 1.2 seconds a lap quicker than Balfe to stand a chance of winning this one.
Yeah, that was the question for me, is how quick was Sean going to be, and he's just proving that he's more than quick enough to hold this lead, and it's not really shrinking at the rate it needs to shrink in order for the lead to change. In fact, if anything, he's pretty much holding on to it.
Well, Sean's one of the nicest guys you could hope to meet in the paddock, and probably didn't appreciate this morning when I bumped into him to say, right, are you going to win today? And there was a look between himself and Phil Keane which suggested they were quietly confident that they got the package underneath them, but are a little bit too modest to say so. Nonetheless, Sean Balfe leads the way from Gustavo Jacquemin and Andres Saravia as we have 25 minutes to go here in Estoril. And Michael Benham, we have seen demoted by Thomas Biaggi. Didn't see where the move happened, but it was perhaps inevitable. Now, for Michael here, there's a lot of benefit if he could just stay in Biaggi's wheel tracks for a few laps.
Yeah, you can always learn a lot following another car closely. They're both mid-engine cars as well, so the lines aren't going to be too different. So I think we're probably going to see some of his quickest laps of the race over the next 2 laps.
And also, if Benham is able to do anything about Andres, or rather Biaggi's able to do anything about Andres Saravia, it just begins to creak the doors slightly ajar with the possibility here of a podium for Michael Benham and Duncan Tappy. Here's a look at the move. Oh, it's just a slight mistake into turn 1 from Benham. He slithered out wide. It looks as if he possibly hit the bump, and that just destabilised the car.
Yeah, obviously, if you get into the ABS there, it really affects the way you can turn in. The front wheels start to judder a little bit, and you can't turn in. So potentially, just got on the ABS a little bit there. But it's part and parcel of GT3 racing. You have ABS, and you need to just fully learn how to use it. And that's probably one of the hardest corners to learn because of the bumping on the brakes.
You see the bumping there for Gustavo Jacquemin. Jacquemin 18 seconds back from Sean Balfe. Again, last time around, Jacquemin was half a second quicker than Balfe. And again, that will not cause Balfe any particular concern. All the while, of course, Jacquemin is pulling clear of Andres Saravia in third, but Saravia is starting to be caught by Thomas Biaggi, and they have got the spectre of Kevin Estoril, because Estoril is still a good 1.5 seconds quicker than pretty much every single car ahead of him on the road. What better way to spend a sunny spring afternoon than watching supercars in action here at Estoril. We're currently following Gustavo Jacquemin, and, well, he is in second place, chasing down Sean Balfe. It's the fight for third, which is starting to come together. Andres Saravia is currently third. He's got Thomas Biaggi, Michael Benham, and Kevin Estoril all closing up into his tail. It is Alex Kapadia and Ben Evans bringing the action here, and the progress of Estoril is surely going to be concerning everybody up to and including Jacquemin.
Yeah, I think so. I think Estoril's potentially on for a podium here, and we just have to wait and see how he gets through the next couple of cars in 5th and 4th places, how much time he loses passing those cars. But judging by his pace, it's not going to be very much time to get past them.
Well, Estoril is already within 7.5 seconds of Michael Benham, as the immensely popular Colombian driver Gustavo Jacquemin hits the brakes and negotiates turn 1 in the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW. Brilliant looking car, and as good as it looks on TV, up close it is absolutely immaculate. Jacquemin that time around actually lost some ground to Sean Balfe. He was 0.6 seconds slower than Balfe. Whether or not there was just a little bit of a mistake from Jacquemin, don't know. But of course, he'll have inherited a car potentially with worn tyres.
Possibly, yeah, but I think actually it's actually just Sean upping his pace a little bit. He's knocked 7/10 off the times he was doing when he first got in the car. Obviously, he's now settled down, and that's really impressive pace by Sean. He's actually pulling away from some of these sort of high-profile drivers that are chasing him.
Jacquemin back to Saravia is 5.4 seconds. Saravia to Biaggi is 5.6 seconds. Saravia to Benham is 4.3 seconds, and Benham to Estoril is 4.6 seconds. And for Kevin Estoril, the possibility of a podium here, I think he's quite dependent on how quickly he gets past Michael Benham. Meanwhile, this is the battle for 10th, 11th place, as Stefan Lemaret is closing off the tail of Diederik Schittoff in the bright orange Renault RS01. And the RS01, for some of the other competitors, a little bit of an unknown quantity. It was a newly introduced car last year, very, very quick in its trophy, guys. It's been modified a little bit to run in GT3 spec, but I think it's one of those cars, as the season unfolds, we could start to see moving steadily up the order. It certainly looks good. So Lemeray perfectly poised in the AF course, Ferrari. And as you were saying earlier on, Alex, that Ferrari 458 is just one of the nicest balanced cars. It never looks like a handful.
No, it's my favourite GT3 car to drive. I've driven a few of them now, and that car just wills you to drive it faster. It's so perfectly balanced. It's still really, really quick in a straight line as well. So I just saw an overtaking move there from Kevin Estoril there on Michael Benham. But no, the 458 is an amazing car to drive, and actually I would actually put that down as the car to watch when you go to some of the cars go to the ACO Le Mans Cup race at the support race for Le Mans this year. That car is still really, really quick in a straight line. I would suggest that a 458 potentially could be quicker than an LMP3 car, which are in the same race as them. That
would be fascinating, won't it, to see the Ferrari. So there was a similar mistake at turn 1 from Michael Benham. He allows Kevin Estoril to get through up into 5th position. Now this could be good. Thomas Biaggi versus Kevin Estoril, the potential of a podium. Here we go into turn 1. Just caught out a little bit on the brakes, running wide, and it's sometimes easy to do, isn't it, when you get the call on the radio, you've got a car catching, you start to drive with what's going on in your mirrors rather than what's going on ahead of you, and again, that's something that comes with experience.
Yeah, you've always just got to be focusing on what's going on ahead. As soon as you start driving in the mirrors, your whole focus just shifts backwards, and you're not always driving at your best.
Liedrich busy defending from Stefan Lemeray in the Battle of the Benelux, the Dutch driver in the Renault ahead of the Belgian in the Ferrari. Lemeray taking a second or so out of last time around. When he leaves the gap open invitingly for Lemeray into turn 6, but we've seen a couple of the drivers preferring that wide entry to then take the late apex, which seems quite high risk when you've got somebody on your tail.
Yeah, you wouldn't normally be leaving the door open there. There's quite a few corners like that on this circuit, actually. Turn 4 as well, turn 3 before it, where you have quite a wide open entry, and then it's very, very easy for someone else to just drive straight to the apex and then block you on the way out.
I think Diedrich will probably be getting the call on the radio from Nicky Pastorelli along the lines of focus on your corner exits, don't leave the door open, and let Lemeray do all the hard work. They are coming to the end of their 29th lap as we are heading into the final 20 minutes or so of this opening race of the season for the International GTOpen. Sean Balfe leading the way and driving at a beautiful pace. He is actually quicker now lap on lap than Gustavo Jacquemin. Andres Saravia is being caught by Thomas Biaggi now at a rate of about 0.8 of a second a lap. And Kevin Estoril is catching Biaggi to the tune of 0.6 of a second a lap. So we should still get a little bit of a fight for the podium in the last stage of the race. In the meantime, we can enjoy this battle for 10th position. Now, what do you start doing differently, Alex, to when you're defending like this, to not slow yourself down too much, but to make sure you keep the other guy behind?
Certainly, when you get to the apex of some of the corners, you can sometimes you can not get on the throttle quite as early as you would normally have expected to, and that means that the guy behind is sort of almost waiting for you to get on the throttle. Then you nail the throttle coming out of the corner, and he's not expecting it. So you can sometimes actually slow up at the apex a little bit, not brake test anybody, but just wait a little bit before you get on the throttle, and then fire it out in a straight line. And that often gives you a really, really good exit when they're not going to get that. The downside to that is that then ends up being quite time consuming. You actually, it's fine if you just got one person to race, but if there's other people in the race that you're either trying to chase down or someone else is catching you from behind, that can start to lose you quite a lot of time. Yeah, because you're losing the velocity down the straight, but it means the car behind can't propel away past. Now, this is going to be interesting. Andres Saravia making his International GTOpen debut. He raced here in Estoril last year in Euro Formula Opens. We have a change of position. It's Francesco Castellacci to the inside of Roldan Rodriguez, and Castellacci in the Ferrari 488, which I'm increasingly coveting. Then it gets squeezed by Colin Noble into turn 3. It leaves a little bit of an opening possibly for Rodriguez, who can't fight back, so they get in and amongst the traffic, and we thought Castellacci was going to go well. He's now up into 7th place. Here is another look at it, and he's coming from a long way back on the brakes, in fact, for turn 1. And that's well judged from Castellacci.
who also eases past Antonio Nogueira. Should say that Nogueira and Noble, the white Porsche and the black Radical, they are busy battling for position as well. And certainly when you're fighting for position in your lapping cars that battling position, that is potentially very tricky. Meanwhile, here come Saravia and Biaggi. In the background, you saw headlights ablaze, Kevin Estre, and now this is a really difficult call for the DriveX team to Andres Saravia defending third place, because if he starts to do what you were saying, Alex, slowing down on the apex, all it's going to do is accelerate Kevin Estre joining that fight.
Yeah, I mean that's a tactic you would employ when it's just between one or two cars. There's no other threats from anyone else in the race. I don't think he wants to start getting into doing that now. He just needs to keep on pushing ahead, but not leave the door open going into some of these corners as well.
So there is the Audi of Andres Saravia, the dark car, the bright orange Lamborghini Huracan of Thomas Biaggi. This is the fight for third place. The first two places, with 50 minutes to go, reasonably settled. Sean Bouth leading it, Gustavo Jackerman in second, and Jackerman now 20.5 seconds adrift of Bouth.
Really impressive by Sean, just showing his quality, and he's only lapping a second away from what Phil was doing. Really impressive stint by Sean to be pulling away from some of these drivers behind him.
I'm just looking at the progress of Kevin Estre and the gaps that he needs to close down. He's only 12 seconds off Gustavo Jackerman and is lapping 1.6 seconds a lap quicker than the Colombian. But he's about to come into that old motorsport cliche. It's one thing to catch the car in front, it's quite another to find your way past it. That is going to be the challenge here for Kevin Estre in pursuit of second place. Meanwhile, we've got this fight for third, and Biaggi just easing up to Saravia, and this is a real demonstration of why smoothness pays, because Biaggi doesn't look like he's going quickly, but he's a second closer to Saravia.
Yeah, and also he's just by doing that, when you're not sliding the car around, the tyres are just staying in better condition. Like I said earlier on, the tyre temperature is staying lower, and therefore they're going to have more grip at the next corner and less likely to slide again. Every slide increases your tyre temperature, increases the possibility of sliding in the next one. Every time you're sliding, you're just taking rubber off the surface of the tyre, and it's really making the tyre go away from you.
Saravia moved across at the last moment, then at turn 3 to cover the line. He knows that Biaggi is coming, and now Biaggi looks to pull the pin, or does he? He used all the curb, ran out wide there, and almost immediately there is a shift in the body language and tone of the Lamborghini. He tries flashing his headlights. That unsurprisingly doesn't result in Saravia's immediate yielding of the place. So instead, Biaggi's going to have to find a way through. Now, is there anywhere here, Alex, where you could really catch the car in front by surprise?
There's a few places. So, for example, coming into the chicane, you've got a right-hand kink before it, and you can go straight to the apex there, and you can carry the speed through it. So, the corner after this next one here, he may go straight to the apex there, but I think he's going to wait and try and do it on the straight. If he can get a better exit out of the parabolica, this is the corner I was talking about if he was trying to go up the inside there, but it's a risky move, and you have to believe that the other guy is going to see you and not turn in on you.
I guess for Biaggi, the key is, can he fluster the Audi into making a mistake through the parabolica where the Audi is strong, and then get even more of an advantage along the straight. Andres Saravia, though, was one of the finest dicers in the Euro Formula Open last season. It was a brave person who went toe-to-toe with him, as now Biaggi gets right onto terms with the Audi as they accelerate along the start and finish straight. The Audi has the early running, but it's a long way towards turn 1. Is the Lamborghini going to close up? Yes, Saravia thinks so. He preemptively moves across to the inside line. Can he get the car stopped in time? The Lamborghini goes to the high line, will aim to try and switch back now downhill towards turn 2. It almost works out. Well positioned though from Saravia, but he leaves the door open, or does he? Oh, there's almost contact between the pair of them. Saravia shuts the door at the last moment. Biaggi thought that was going to open up to him. It didn't. Robust defence from Saravia, but it does the job.
It wouldn't surprise me if we see Biaggi making a move into turn 3 on the next lap. He obviously couldn't do it into turn 2. It was never really going to be enough. Saravia was within his rights to turn in there, and I think that he'll just hold back a little bit going through turn 2, but then go for a dive straight to the apex on turn 3 on the next lap.
Problem is, he's only going to have now about one lap to do it, as the flash of the headlights from Kevin Estre says, "Hi guys, I'm here to join in and I want to be on the podium," as Biaggi knows he's going to have this lap and probably the first half of the next one before Estre makes it a three-way tussle. All the while though, this group isn't really losing much ground to Gustavo Jackerman, who's only 7 or so seconds up the road ahead of them. Oh, he thinks about it. Biaggi to the inside of the chicane. He tries to shorten the line. There wasn't a lot of space there, and that felt like a little bit of a lunge. There's almost contact between Saravia and Biaggi coming out into turn 12, and now Estoril makes it a 3-car fight, and it's the McLaren which draws alongside the Lamborghini as they go into the Parabolica. This is going to be quite the sort out into turn 1 as they pick up the pace out of the Parabolica. That's where the Lamborghini is so strong, but Kevin Estoril has the benefit of a little bit of the toe behind the Lamborghini as well as they hurtle towards the first corner. Who moves where? Biaggi looks to the inside line, nothing doing. He has to stick to his guns though. Estoril looks to fight back as well. And for Biaggi, where to position the car? Do you attack? Do you defend? Really, he's got to do both. Oh, and Estoril thinks about the move into turn 2, and what that does is removes any chance for Estoril to challenge into turn 3.
Yeah, Biaggi keeps looking to the inside of turn 2. I don't think he's going to do it there, and I think he's just going to leave himself exposed to Estoril having a run on him into turn 3.
They swoop out of turn 4, and Kevin Estoril, sure, is enjoying this enormously. He can see the moves in front of him unfolding as he flashes the headlights once more. And Biaggi is looking really quite anxious, isn't he, now, to make this move happen, and that's when the mistakes start to creep in, because there were a couple of times that last lap when it felt like he was trying to force it, and again he's right up behind Saravia now, and it's going to be kicking out of turn 8 into that chicane where Thomas Biaggi might well roll the dice. He certainly thought about that, but what it means is it compromises his line in, and then does it compromise his exit? He uses the width of the road. That allows the McLaren maybe a little bit more agile on exit to draw alongside. Estoril then looks for the switchback and gets his nose in front, this time for the Parabolica, and Kevin Estoril goes through into 4th position ahead of Thomas Biaggi. And that just seemed a little bit strange. The way the Lamborghini was positioned, it was as if he was attacking the Audi rather than defending from the McLaren.
Yeah, well, I think Biaggi there got a little bit stuck on the left-hander going into the Parabolica. There's a horrible bump as you turn into that, and I think he just got a bit caught out in the bump there and missed the apex on the left, which allowed Estoril the opportunity to get on the gas harder on the way out and just out-accelerate him into the Parabolica to the point before he lifted.
We have got just under 9 minutes remaining in this thrilling fight for 3rd place in the opening race of the season for the International GTOpen. Thank you very much for joining us today here in Estoril as Saravia makes the mistake. Oh, and there's contact between Estoril and Saravia, and Andres Saravia gets fired into the gravel trap and turned around in the DriveX Audi. It was the slightest of touches, but it was just enough to tip the Audi into a very, very slight spin, and a real shame for the battle to end that way.
Yeah, it'd be good to see a replay of that. I mean, it looked like Estoril was hoping just to hold around the inside, whereas Saravia was probably expecting him to sort of to V the corner, to go in a little bit deep and then cut back, and by that point Estoril was hoping to have got to the apex and just sort of block him on the exit, but it'll be interesting to see what happened there again.
Kevin Estoril now released. He's 9.8 seconds back. Here is a look, first of all, at Estoril finding his way past Biaggi, and yet Biaggi was offline coming into turn 12 and could never regain it. Oh my goodness me, that was close between Stefan Lemeray and Dietrich Schittorf. Lemeray somehow able to take evasive action. All right, here is the move we wanted to see. It was one of those really awkward little bumps as well, just at the wrong angle to destabilise the Audi. Not unsurprisingly, the word is that it's now under investigation, as here is our race leader, Sean Balfe, and he is about to get embroiled, and this is the last thing that Sean will want, in the battle for 10th place between Dietrich Schittorf and Stefan Lemeray.
Yeah, he can take his time here though. He's got a 21-second lead from Jackerman, and he's lapping 3 seconds or 2 seconds a lap quicker than Lemeray there, so Lemeray will also get some blue flags, I expect.
Yeah, Sean Balfe can actually really afford to give away 2 or 3 seconds a lap between now and the checkered flag. It's not going to cause him too much of concern, but having been on the podium more often than not last year, Sean Balfe, I think he got on the podium in every single event in which he participated. He hasn't yet got that victory, but it is looking very good this afternoon. We've got just 6.5 minutes remaining, and Balfe has got this ferocious fight for 10th place going on ahead of him, and after the sort out they had into turn 1 last time around, he will be watching with a degree of anxiety Now, are we going to see a show of Ferrari solidarity here from Stefan Lamouret?
I doubt it.
Yeah, that would be a no, as they arrive at turn 1. They've also got Antonio Nogueira as well. But Balfour's got the luxury of the whole of the start and finish straight. Not to worry about here.
It wouldn't surprise me if you see Sean just back off a couple of seconds from the back of that group, because it's only a risk to go past him. There's 5 minutes, 50 seconds to go. He doesn't need to push to get past those guys.
Here is Gustavo Jacquemin. That last lap from Jacquemin, 1 minute 42.0. Now, what does Kevin Estre give us in clear air? A 1 minute 40.8. He's 9 seconds back from the Colombian. That feels like it's a little bit too much of an ask for Kevin Estre. Yeah, 1.2 seconds. He needs really 1.7 seconds and hopes that Sean Balfe is positioned such that they squeeze another lap from it. The recovery continues on Andres Saravia, and that's really unfortunate for Andres Saravia. He was making a very impressive debut in the championship, as is Gustavo Jacquemin, and his sizable fan club back in Colombia will be delighted to see their man at the sharp end of the field. And again, for Jacquemin, he's just managed the race really well. He found himself post pit stops with good track position and managed the pace thereafter.
And a great debut for Theo Martin, and again Garage 59 in third there as well.
Theo Martin Motorsport, 2 new BMWs for this weekend. Garage 59, Michael Benham is still holding on in 5th place. For how long though? He's got Francesco Castellacci homing up on his tail, but thereafter I think Benham's going to be safe to claim an excellent 5th position. Jacquemin negotiating the penultimate turn. And yeah, Sean Balfe backs right off the pace. Here is why. And you know well enough, Alex, from the times you've been on the pit wall watching your co-driver in the last couple of laps, the blood pressure is high enough without seeing him in and amongst this traffic.
This is absolutely the worst situation, because he doesn't want to push to get past those guys. He's probably at more danger pushing to get past them, but also quite a lot of danger just sitting behind them, because they're going to battle. If one of them tips the other one into a spin, he could get collected by it. I'd almost want to be 10, 20 car lengths back from them, just in case anything did happen.
It's quite difficult though, isn't it? Because for Sean Balfe to back off to give them 5 seconds will feel like an eternity. But it might resolve itself in favour anyway, as Lemray launches the inside of Dietrich Schittoff, and then Schittoff looks to fight back. They come side by side out of turn 6, and Sean Balfe flashes his headlights, finds himself right in the middle of this battle. He's going to look to the inside of Stefan Lemray, who I suspect has had the call on the radio saying to give Balfe the racing room, so he clears one of those cars.
But will the Renault now think that Sean is the other Ferrari coming up behind him and cut him off?
I would be willing to bet that somebody from the Balfe Motorsport team is right now in the V8 racing garage imploring them to get on the radio to make the call. The problem is that Lemray is a little bit quicker through some of the turns than Sean Balfe at the moment. With 3 minutes to go, we're about to go into the penultimate lap of the race here for Sean Balfe, so he's got just 8.4 kilometres of racing ahead of him as he runs along the start and finish straight. And Sean Balfe and Phil Keane do take the win. It's going to be a very popular victory. They're a very much liked team in the paddock, and particularly because it's a family affair. It's Sean and his dad, and then various friends and colleagues, lots of the mechanics hold down other jobs as well. It's really great to see them at the very front of the field. Here's Gustavo Jacquemin, and there is Kevin Estre. Estre, 5.6 seconds back. He was almost 2 seconds quicker than Jacquemin. Jacquemin cannot afford to lose anything now over the closing stages.
No, we're going to see 2 more laps, so it's going to be close, but I think that Jacquemin will hold it.
Yeah, he's got enough experience to know that he can give away a second and a half on this lap. It doesn't really matter. The key is not to get flustered, not to put the car into the gravel or into any sort of bother. Thomas Biaggi in 4th place. Francesco Castellacci is in 5th, ahead of Michael Benham. Then Roldan Rodriguez, Antonio Coimbra, Dietrich Schittoff, Stefan Lemray, Colin Noble and Antonio Nogueira. Estre still pushing on, isn't he, in the Garage 59 McLaren.
We never know what's going to happen with Jacquemin. We haven't seen Jacquemin's position, how much traffic he's got. It's worth pushing. It's just going to be a big ask.
Here is Antonio Coimbra alongside Luis Silva, they are our GTAM class leaders, and they're leading that from Shitov and Felipe Barreiros, and then Stefan Lemire and Claudio Stanvic. So that's going to be a very popular home trip to the podium for Antonio Coimbra and Luis Silva. Oh, and that is not the place that you want to come to a halt, Colin Noble, in the Radical. The fearless Marshall goes trackside to see if that car could be coaxed back into life. Sean Balfe is now into the final lap of the race. He's still got Stefan Lemire homing in on his tail. Balfe will be willing the next 3 or 4 kilometres away, but it's really been a perfectly managed race, Alex, from Sean Balfe and Phil Keane. Keane did exactly what he was doing the first stint. They had a great pit stop, and then Sean's driven superbly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Phil had the pace that looked like to get the lead there, but obviously with the way the dicing sort of worked out, he ended up second behind Duncan Tappy, and there wasn't really the need to risk it all to pass Duncan. And then Sean's got in the car and been virtually on the same pace as Phil. Absolutely rapid compared to some of the, like I say, the high-profile sort of pro driver coming up behind him, and they've just totally managed this absolutely perfectly.
Sean Balfe now is just a handful of corners away from the checkered flag and victory in the first race of the International GTOpen season. It's through this section the Radical of Colin Noble, pleased to see, has been moved to a place of safety, and now Sean Balfe could almost coax it home. He does not want Stefan Lemire like this all over his tail as they head into the final turn, and Sean Balfe rounds the parabolica. The checkered flag is ready and waiting as he accelerates out of the final corner. He accelerates towards the checkered flag, and it's going to be victory in the opening round of the International GTOpen for Sean Balfe and Phil Keane for Balfe Motorsport. The team celebrating on the pit wall, hugs all around. Absolutely brilliant day for them. They qualified on the front row. They have converted it to victory. Gustavo Jacquemin, Fernando Monnier, Teo Martin Motorsport in the BMW's debut in the GTOpen take a fine second place, with Kevin Estoril and Alexander West completing the podium ahead of the Lamborghini of Thomas Biaggi and Fabrizio Crostani, who claim fourth. Congratulations all around on the Teo Martin Motorsport pit wall. Always good to be on the podium, first time out running a new car. Celebration for Balfe Motorsport. Sean Balfe and Phil Keane, they are our round one winners. So round towards Parc Fermé for Balfe and Keane. Sean Balfe, particularly that second half of the race, he had the advantage. He did very well to hold on to it as Antonio Coimbra and Luis Silva take our GTAM class victory in a very creditable 8th place overall in their new Mercedes for the Sport and U team. Sean Balfe really enjoyed that. The fist out of the window, the number one sign celebration, and why not? He is going to truly savour this victory lap back towards Parc Fermé. Fight for 9th and 10th. Crosses the line now in favour of Diedrich Schittoff and Stefan Lemire. Here is a look then at the final classification. So the win for Sean Balfe and Phil Keane. Second place, Gustavo Jacquemin and Fernando Monnier. Third place for Alexander West and Kevin Estoril. And Estoril, who set the fastest lap of the race as well. Fourth for Biaggi and Crostani, clear of Fleur and Castellacci. Very impressive in the Ferrari 488. Then Michael Benham and Duncan Tappy in sixth, clear of Ramos and Rodriguez. Coimbra and Silva, they win the GTAM class ahead of Shitov and Barreiros, and then Stanvic and Lemire rounding out our top 10. It's a case probably of what might have been for Andres Saravia and Cesar Campanico, that unfortunate contact late on, leading to the retirement of the DriveX Audi. So in terms of the championship, well, the early running goes in favour of Keane and Balfe, but there is, of course, a long, long way to go. We're just one race into a 14-race season. Sean Balfe heading down pit lane. He will be greeted by the cheers and congratulations of the Balfe Motorsport team. thoroughly entertaining way to open the International GTOpen season. Sean Balfe and Phil Keane are our winners from Gustavo Jacquemin and Fernando Monnier, then Kevin Estre and Alexander West. Congratulations from Balfe to Keane. They will be posing for the photographers, I'm sure, and giving the thumbs up, and why not? Beautifully managed race for Gustavo Jacquemin. Well, a very strong second place. Smiles and congratulations. And we saw this last year with Teo Martin Motorsport, that they just got stronger and stronger as the year unfolded. Also a very impressive debut in the International GTOpen for Garage 59. They get on the podium with Kevin Estre and Alexander West. And for Biaggi and Cristani in fourth place, well, that could, I'm sure, translate itself into a win once we go racing tomorrow. For now, though, there is plenty of time to smile down in Parc Fermé. Great race in glorious sunshine in Estoril, and the perfect way to start the season. Chance to enjoy in super slow motion and top three cars on their way to the podium.
Yeah. Phil Keane, Sean Balfe, after 4 nice podium finishes last year, it's victory now.
Yeah, I was getting a bit of stick from Phil that it was about time we got back on the top step. Phil's efforts really set it all up. So it made it as easy as it can be amongst a field of that quality. I just kept pushing, and the team were good, talking to me about my pace. So Phil set it up, I brought it home. It was teamwork. Everybody, it was all teamwork.
And Estoril seems a circuit suited for you.
Yeah, no, we've always done well here. You know, the team have stepped up the game this year, and the car's been, run faultlessly. And Sean's improved no end as a driver, so it all adds to the team effort. Everyone's done brilliantly.
Great start of the season. Well done. Podium now.
Two very happy drivers about to head to the podium. Let's take a look back then at the highlights of a thoroughly entertaining way to start the 2016 season. Fabrizio Cristani it was who got the jump on Phil Keane and Duncan Tappy as the field sprinted towards turn 1. Fernando Monnier was also in the mix. Fortunately, all went wrong for James Abbott at turn 2. He took the tyre barrier with him, damaged the front end of the car. The early stage of the race were characterised by this frenetic fight. Eventually it was Duncan Tappy who prevailed, able to squeeze past Fabrizio Cristani, and Phil Keane was able to follow in his wheel tracks just a few moments later. There's also some good scrapping further behind. Thomas Floor and Alexander West were engaging in a very close wheel-to-wheel battle, so they wanted to give them cars the best chance of challenging for the podium in the second half of the race. Post-pit stops, Thomas Biaggi was the man on the move, involved in a great scrap for third place with Andres Saravia, as Sean Balfe and Gustavo Jacquemin sprinted away at the front of the field. They were quickly joined by Kevin Estre, and Estre able to take advantage of that mistake from Biaggi to move into fourth, and then slight contact with Andres Saravia gave him third, and sadly the Drivex Audi spinning into retirement in the gravel trap. It's a very popular victory though for Balfe Motorsport. Sean Balfe and Phil Keane, they are triumphant in the first race of the year from Jacquemin and Monnier, then Estre and West with Antonio Coimbra and Luis Silva winning our GTAM trophy. Perfect day for Balfe and Keane, qualified it on the front row, came through to take the victory. So on to the podium presentations. West and Estoril in third place. Gustavo Jackman and Fernando Mornier. Runners up, Sean Balfe and Phil Keane, our race winners for Balfe Motorsport. All smiles on the Estoril podium as the British national anthem is played in honour of Balfe Motorsport. Sean Balfe and Phil Keane, winners in the first race of the International GTOpen season. As we move on to the presentation of the trophies. So third place for the Garage 59 pairing, West and Estoril, although that may be discussed after the event. Runners up for Teo Martin Motorsport in the BMW, Fernando Mornier, Gustavo Jackman. And our race winners, Balfe Motorsport, Sean Balfe and Phil Keane. Well, they were on the podium 4 times last year in the International GTOpen, but never on the top step. They've managed to achieve that first time out in 2016. They receive the handshakes and congratulations. Don't forget, the weekend is only half done here in Estoril. We will be back tomorrow with the second race of the season for the International GTOpen. They will be qualifying for that first thing tomorrow morning. But for now, it's time to celebrate with the champagne on the podium, which means that it's time from Alex Capardia and Ben Evans to say goodbye from Estoril. We'll see you tomorrow as the International GTOpen season continues. We have got, of course, the GTAM. So we've got the GTAM podium to go on to next. So third place, and that was Stefan Lemeray and Claudio Sadanovic in the AF Course Ferrari. Runners-up, Diedrich Schitthoff and Philippe Barrieroth in the Renault RS01, and then Antonio Coimbra and Luis Silva in the Sporting New Mercedes, taking the victory in that and finishing in a very fine 8th place overall as well. It's a great battle for second place in the GTAM Honours that kept us very entertained in the latter stages of the race. Handshakes all around and a very popular home win for Coimbra and Silva. Huge applause to the Portuguese national anthem and GTAM winners Luis Silva and Antonio Coimbra. As we move on to the presentation of the trophies. So third place for Lemeray and Sadanovic. May have been second, but Stefan Lemeray couldn't quite find a way past the Renault in the latter stages, and it was the V8 Racing prepared Renault RS01, Diedrich Schütthoff and Felipe Barrieros, that finishes second in the GTOpen class. And then Sport a new Mercedes, a new car for 2016, and immediately right on the pace for Luis Silva and Antonio Coimbra. They win the GTOpen class here in the first race of the International GTOpen here in Estoril. So the trophies hoisted aloft, it's time to move to the bubbly, which means it's time to say goodbye from Estoril. We'll see you tomorrow.